Portland. For more than 80 years, bringing you the finest fly lines in the world. By Hodgman, quality outdoor products since 1838. And by Scott, high-performance fly rods.
After the first 2 official practice days, the competition is set to begin in the 17th annual Mitsubishi Motors World Fly Fishing Championships. All the work, practice, and preparation now get tested. The night before the competition was set to begin, Team USA coach Bucky Buckenroth met with the members of the team to discuss strategies.
The biggest issue here is there's some waters some of us have never seen before. For example, you're on the Southwest Toronto, you've never seen before. The beauty of it is you're in water that's really readable and really understandable. You're going to see the seams in particular, not really riffles so much, but the seams on the deep water banks. You're fishing a deep volcanic canyon with giant boulder fields falling off of the volcanic canyon walls, and you need to look at the seams and read off the bank where the seam comes to the surface. And it's going to be tough, especially in the morning, because the fish are going to be sulking a little bit. They're in between hatches. They're a hatch-oriented river, so they want mayflies, they want stoneflies, they want afternoon hoppers. And in the morning time, when they don't have any of those, they're just sulking. So it's going to be a matter of perseverance and working that to animating the dry fly, fishing like a living insect. That's going to be key. And give it a little bit longer than we fished today. We're fishing rapid casting. That tomorrow is a slower species of fish. They're not this fast, aggressive snake river cutthroat. It's a different species. They're slower. They're going to come up and it's going to seem like they're on vacation in Jamaica. Yeah, they're give us another rum punch. So it's that kind of fish. The strike is different as well. And you didn't hear this, but we talked about it. It's Bob calls it his 3-beer strike.
I call it New Zealand strike.
Yeah.
If you don't remember it, you're guaranteed to miss your first 2 or 3 fish, and they could be beauties. In New Zealand, when you see the fish actually come up and take the fly before you raise your rod tip, they say, "God save the Queen," and then lift.
So the idea here is, don't panic. You know the game. It's 1 fish. Get on the board, and then play. Have fun from there. Just relax into it. I would definitely recommend fishing that sinking line, especially if it's any kind of funky weather at all. If it's not, it's very, very likely that on the outside of you'll see some of these bends where you have a big sweeping outside bend, and on the inside there'll be a little riffle drop, and it'll be 4 feet underwater. And just look for it, and they're going to be stacked on that thing. It's going to be 4 feet underwater on the inside of the bend. And you go, that's slower. It's deeper and slower, and there's structure in there. You can fish out those mayflies. You can also nymph it, but you can fish those with mayflies and bring up fish because they're used to looking up. If you're finding it's a warm, clear, high-pressure day, go for that 3-drop system where you have the nymph, the emergent stage, and the small hair wing mayfly pattern. Just try all 3. Look for your PMD hatch starting, or that King Cahill hatch starting between 11 and 1. Just kind of watch for it, and it may be red hot in the afternoon. Definitely those banded hoppers that we got this afternoon, that's a great fly there. That small yellow Sally stimulator is great there. You missed that action we had this afternoon, but that was a good fly for us. It's really not that small attractor pattern water because we're not talking about 2-year-olds here. We're talking about big, dominant fish. And so it's bigger morsels. If it's just not happening, go with a couple of things, and it can get worrisome, especially in the morning. Go with a couple of things you feel really good about, and just stay comfortable, fish it well, and it's going to happen. And it's just read those seams. The seams are everything, and it's not 5 inches on one side of the seam and 6 inches on the other. It's right on the seam, and they'll be shifting with them. And then at the tail end of every one of those long canyon walls, slow down and really read how the current pans out after the tail end of those canyon walls. And that's key, because they're going to be pushed off a little bit, and that's where a lot of people miss the fish. Just like we were doing on the dike walls today, where at the tail end of those canyon walls, when people would typically start peeling over to fish the other bank, make the guide stay on the canyon wall you've been on, and stay on it, stay on it, stay on it, and fish it all the way out. And then he'll have to earn his money by rowing across. It's amazing how many times those fish have not been picked on. In the afternoon now, it's a whole different game. And I think you understand mayflies and how to work the riffle banks. Think of fish in a little bit different zone than normal on those riffles on the South Fork. They're up at the top end, but not off the shelf in deep water. A lot of times they're not accessible unless you know. They just won't come up. Your gold spinner might work though. Something to think of. But they're further up the riffle drop and off the shelf. And they're waiting. They're staging. They're going, please send me a mayfly. So a big part of what's happened with the change in the river is there is a lot on every stretch of side channels that were major flowing parts of the river last year, the year before, and maybe for 15 years previous, that are now abandoned with so little trail. And every time you see that, what I notice most with people when they fish the river is they throw to the seam that's in the main channel of the river, and they think where that seam comes down and hits the side channel seam, that's the one to fish on. It's not. You want to throw up in the side channel and let the side channel seam bring down to the river seam. Because they're going to be in that little bit of slack water, and they're actually not thinking about the river for food. They're thinking of that little side channel, because everything that was in that side channel all winter long, and is still crawling and cleaning and trying to get out of it because the water's dropping now, they're doing a major nymphal drift out of that stuff. So they're falling and pushing their way out of that dropping water condition and coming back into the river, and the fish figure that out. Be patient, wait for the right cast. It's not now, it's right now when they make the shot, because you're not going to get another shot at that particular piece of water. If they can't anchor the boat, they're not going to stop that much. They're going to be moving around. So just wait for that one particular cast, and that's true on the sophomore too. There's one key thing here that I want to reiterate. All the guys you're fishing with and gals you're fishing with are very talented anglers. Watch from them. Let them be your fourth and fifth fly. Let them help you figure out what you should be doing, and watch it. It'll help. That can be a real indicator of what you need to be doing.
Any angler in the competition would certainly learn a lot more about fishing the waters of western Wyoming by spending a few minutes with Bucky Buckenroth. It was now time for the competition to begin.
Hi, I'm Jack Dennis. How many times have you been out on the stream and not had the right fly? You ought to think about carrying a stream-side fly tying kit. It can really save the day. Well, we're going to tie a fly that imitates a lot of different mayflies. In fact, it's going to be kind of in between an emerger and an adult. It's one of my favorite pale morning dun imitations. We're going to be using a size 14 Dairiki 300 hook, and again 8/0 thread. We're going to lay a base of thread. Now, one of the things we're going to do is use some microfibettes, and we're going to show you a neat little trick about how to divide them. We're going to put a little dubbing loop right after wrapping our thread. We've got some microfibettes. I'm going to show you a little trick of putting these on. We're going to measure so it's approximately the shank length, and we're going to tie in the microfibettes, tie right on top, tie it in loosely. We can trim this out a little bit later on. Now, what we're going to do is use our thumbnail to separate, to make these fibers spread out, and then we're going to take our dubbing loop just like that. So now we have divided fibettes. We're going to move up the shank, we're going to trim, and now we're ready to add a little dubbing. And we're going to use some Antron with a little bit of tinge of yellow in it. If you're tying a pale morning dun, some of them even can have a little pink to them. It's kind of up to you. Adding just a tiny bit of dubbing here. This is going to be a pale morning dun. It's called a hair-wing pale morning dun. Really an interesting pattern and easy to tie. We're going to wrap, tapering it slightly. About halfway down the shank now we're going to stop, we're going to lay down our dubbing, and we're going to add a saddle hackle. Or it can even be a very thin neck hackle. This is a dun. There's several ways you can tie this fly. You can tie a larger hackle, then trim it down, or you can tie an undersized hackle, and that's what I'm doing right now. Now I'm going to go back and get a slightly different color for our thorax. It's going to be even with a little pink in it, as you can see right here. I believe in changing my thoraxes just slightly. If you look at insects, you'll see the thoraxes really vary in color to the body. See, there's our thorax. Now notice that I have a little bit of hook right here, bare. Now, you on these long saddle hackles, you can actually wrap them just with your hands. You don't even need your hackle pliers. Notice that I've wrapped some hackle. You might say, my gosh, that's a lot of hackle. But we're going to trim a lot of it off. Trim it right on top. But we can either use elk hair or we can use CDC. This particular one, we're going to use elk. It's really going to make it float. Going to trim some of the elk. Again, how much hair should you have? 20 fibers, 60 fibers? Measure against your gape. Now, the key to this fly is where you position the hair. Try to get it no more than 3/4 of the shank length. If you have it too far out, it's going to become an elk hair caddis. We want this to be a merging mayfly. Watch my thumb here, rolling my thumb, putting it down, and we're going to wrap a few loose wraps. Now here's the key. Watch what happens. We're going to pull a few fibers, just like this, and wrap. Another few fibers, and wrap. Another few fibers, and wrap. Now comes the tricky part. We've got to trim it. We're going to bring it up, put your scissors in very carefully, and trim. Now you're going to say, whoa, that looks like an elk hair caddis. Well, it's quite a bit different. This hair flares just like that. To make it a little more durable, we're going to add some cement. And we're going to get a little bit of dubbing. Go back to our little pinkish one that we had right here, and we're going to dub over the hair. And we just wrap the dubbing over, and that's going to be more of the thorax. Now we're going to just do a simple whip finish. We'll find my, what I love about
Jim, you made a day box up for me, and that's the latest way I go now, a minimalist approach. But I've learned over 25 years of going all over the world that the fly shops are the ones that know the flies, so I don't take my own flies. I go to the fly shop and I ask them, okay, what would I make up for a day box for today on this, in this case, a spring creek where we're fishing?
Well, I think that's a good point. There are so many variables in going out in a day of fishing to pick out flies. Where you're going, you know, what the time of the year is, what the conditions of the day are, what insects you expect to hatch, that kind of thing. To carry all that with you, stuffed out in your vest, for especially as much as people travel fishing anymore, you'd be a walking fly shop or more out there. So yeah, you're right. People are going to more of these day boxes or a minimalist approach, where they'll maybe carry a large tackle bag with everything in it, and then cherry pick out what they need, or like you said, stop in a local fly shop and pick today's patterns.
If you had to pick 5 flies, five dry flies that would take you anywhere in the world, and say 5 nymphs, what would the 5 dry flies be?
Oh, that's a good question. I would probably, stick with something that matches, first of all, the 3 that would match the main insect categories.
Mm-hmm.
1, a generic type of mayfly, and my choice would probably be a parachute Adams. Number 2 would be some type of a caddis.
Mm-hmm.
That would, since caddis are pretty broad spectrum. Being a western fisherman, I also like stoneflies, so I would probably pull a stimulator in there. A terrestrial, which again I would lean towards a hopper, but a lot of places ants are more popular.
Okay.
And on the surface, last but not least, probably the good old royal wolf.
Okay.
It doesn't look like a damn thing, but it sure does catch a lot of fish.
Catch a lot of fish.
Right.
Yeah, I concur with that choice. Yeah.
What about you on the nymphs, though?
Well, the nymphs, we might differ a little bit, but because the nymphs have gotten so much more sophisticated over the years. But I'd start the old reliable pheasant tail and hare's ear, and you could say, some people would say, okay, you need a brassy for the spring creek fishing and some of the fishing like that, but what would be some of yours after the pheasant tail and hare's ear?
Well, around here, because of the amount of caddis, a lot of the peacock body, imitations such as a bead-headed prince nymph or zug-bug.
Good point, the bead heads.
Yeah, the beads have really become the thing, especially in faster-moving freestyle.
Yeah,
And as much as people may begrudge it occasionally, but the old woolly bugger.
Yep.
You've got that's a great leech imitation, small fish imitation, crayfish imitation. A lot of the non-aquatic insects, the woolly bugger does cover a lot of ground for. So, not truly in the nymph category, but definitely something I would always have in the box.
Would you maybe go for a muddler? For any
I would say
reason?
a muddler.
Marabou muddler, or?
A muddler probably in the past, and I'm sort of basing some of this also on what we've seen as sales in our shop. But I would say a muddler or something like a tarantula. Something on the surface that can be fished wet, can be fished dry, and it's basically meant to create some activity on the surface.
But I've noticed these great nymphs have evolved into the bead heads, the flashbacks, and so they've really been improved.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as with all our tackle, it's better, and we just seem to get better and better, more and more successful with it.
Fly Fisherman Magazine, the leading magazine of fly fishing. For subscription inquiries, call 1-800-829-3340. And remember to visit the Virtual Fly Shop website. Fly Fisherman is brought to you by Mitsubishi Motors of America, built for living. By Cortland, for more than 80 years bringing you the finest fly lines in the world. By Hodgman, quality outdoor products since 1838. And by Scott, high-performance fly rods.
When the competition begins for the 17th annual Mitsubishi Motors World Fly Fishing Championships, the favorites all reside on the European side of the Atlantic Ocean. Italy has won more titles than any other country in the competition, and with anglers Edgardo Donna and Pierluigi Concitto, they have to be among the favorites in this year's competition. Pierluigi has won 2 individual world titles and has looked very good in the practice days leading up to the competition. The team from England is always among the best in the world. Jeremy Herman is a former world champion, and anglers Chris Ogborn and Oliver Edwards create a strong and experienced team. The team from the Czech Republic has also fared well in past World Championships. Thomas Skarchofa is a young lion with an aggressive style and a lot of talent, and the Czechs have performed as well as anyone in the practice days. France has never won a team title, but has always been near the top. Talented angler Jean Astier, Jean-Louis Estubin, Alain Magnin, and Pascal Cognard make up an experienced group of fishermen, and they seem to have a good idea how to fish the waters in the western portion of Wyoming. Team Norway is captained by a woman, Toril Kuba. With anglers Vidar Paulsen and Olaf Sibraten, Norway will be among the contenders. Team Poland has won the World Championships in the past and bring a strong and experienced team to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They are among the finest nymph fishermen in the world. The team from Wales may be the happiest group of anglers in Wyoming, but they didn't show up just to be a part of the competition. Experience is the strength of the Wales team. Most members have taken part in this event in the past and know what to expect when the competition gets underway. If the team from Wales is the happiest to be in Wyoming, the team from Ireland just seems to be celebrating anything and everything to do with their visit to the American West. Team captain Coleman Shaughnessy brings a group of good anglers to the competition, led by Thomas Sweeney, Billy Cavanaugh, and Thomas Whalen. Finland brings a young and aggressive squad across the ocean. Captain Jouko Keito has competed in the World Championships in the past, and his experience should help a group of young anglers that could surprise the more experienced favorites. From the Pacific Rim, New Zealand, Australia, and Japan have sent teams to Wyoming. The Australian captain, Jason Garrett, owns one of the finest fishing lodges in the world in Tasmania and knows what it's like to fish for trout. The country of New Zealand has been called the Angler's El Dorado, and despite their opinion that the trout in this part of America are small by New Zealand standards, they are experts at carefully approaching fish and should do well when the competition moves to the Grays River. The team from Canada is comprised of a group of anglers with some experience on fishing from drift boats on big waters, but they are not real experienced in fishing competitions. Team USA is certainly the most inexperienced team in the field. While each member of the team are very good anglers, fishing in a competition where an aggressive style is needed is not their forte. The USA team is made up of Jim Adams, Martin Downey, John Kelleher, Bob Slammel, Whit Fosberg, and Elizabeth Storer Fawcett. Butterflies the size of a Snake River cutthroat were beginning in all competitors. It was time for the competition to begin.
2, 1.
You're real tense now? Game is just about to start.
Yeah, a little bit nervous. But the water is so nice, and then today it's the sunshine, and then relax and fish, do my best.
You know, every time we go fly fishing, we start out in the morning, we might start out in sunlight and wind up with this. We might start out in cold and end up at 90-degree weather air temperature. What I do is I layer my clothing in the cold morning. When I go out, then I can take off layers as the day warms up. Towards the end of the day, I can add more layers back to keep myself warm and comfortable throughout the entire day while I'm standing in cold water.
And it's quite hard to wind on just as they are. So I put 2 hackles on top of each other